Hi everyone, thank you for your time. I'm going to jump straight right in. There is a growing body of research at the intersection of personality and ASD that presents a promising direction. A recent meta-analysis of personality research in ASD revealed a negative association between each of the personality factors from the five-factor model and core ASD characteristics. This application of personality research has been employed in other mental health fields and has proven useful in better understanding the underlying characteristics and etiological causes of various clinical symptoms and disorders, such as anxiety, ADHD, and psychopathy. Additionally, there has been numerous studies suggesting that core ASD symptoms and comorbidities are associated with personality traits in the five-factor model framework. For example, research has shown that core ASD social symptoms are associated with extroversion. From the personality and ASD literature, it appears that the clinical features that characterize ASD can be mapped onto the personality traits in the five-factor model. Taking on a different lens, there has been decades of research which identify the neural correlates that pertain to each of the five personality factors in the five-factor model. For example, past studies have shown a relationship between extroversion and frontal cortex activation. However, this research is primarily done on the normative adult population, and to my knowledge has not been conducted with the ASD population. It should be noted that there have been neuroimaging studies within ASD research addressing elements captured within the five-factor model, such as temperament or social motivation. However, these traits are essentially facets within the framework, individually only representing a narrow scope of the empirically substantiated five-factor model, and thus further research is needed. I believe that addressing the relationship between neuroactivation patterns and personality traits in the ASD population is central to better understanding the symptoms and etiological causes of ASD. It has been evidenced that personality traits are indicative of a person's thoughts and behaviors. For example, having low extroversion is associated with a lower sensitivity to social rewards, which leads to lower social motivation. Given this, by taking a dimensional approach towards ASD symptoms and comorbidities, one can consider a non-syndromic ASD phenotype as the outcome of certain thoughts and behaviors which are representative of a configuration of multiple elevated personality traits. It can then be reasoned that the established relationship between neuroactivation patterns and personality traits in the normative population can be extended to the ASD population, which will garner insights on ASD symptoms and comorbidities in the context of the expression of personality traits and the neuroactivation patterns that underlie them. However, as stated earlier, there exists a gap in the literature on this very relationship for the ASD population. As such, the first aim of this proposed study is to investigate the relationship between neuroactivation patterns and personality traits in the ASD population, as guided by the personality neuroscience literature regarding the normative population. Extending this line of inquiry, presented is a hypothesized mediation conceptual model, in which I hypothesize that personality traits, as described in the five-factor model, serve as mediators of the link between neuroactivation patterns and ASD symptoms and comorbidities. This mediation model may prove to be particularly useful in resolving the disparate findings in the ASD neuroscience literature. For example, although the superior longitudinal fasciculus and arcuate fasciculus are associated with social impairments in individuals with ASD, there have been inconsistent findings regarding the SLF-AF, an issue that this model may shed light on. Based on the findings from AIM-1, extroversion may perhaps be related to the SLF-AF as predicted. Taking this model into account, I hypothesize that extroversion will be a mediator of the link between functional connectivity of the SLF-AF and social impairment, a core symptom of individuals with ASD. More broadly speaking, I believe that the disparities in SLF-AF functional connectivity is linked to the variability of social impairment in the ASD population, and this relationship is mediated by individuals' level of extroversion and overall personality profile. This conceptual model can be extended to other ASD symptoms and comorbidities in order to investigate the extent in which personality traits mediate the symptom and neurocorrelate relationship as documented in the ASD neuroscience literature. The investigation of this relationship between neuroactivation patterns and ASD symptomatology parallels the ASD genetics literature. Since the notion of multiple autisms was first formally presented in 2007, genetic and neuroimaging research has found a considerable amount of evidence that supports this theory. The once leading hypothesis in this field was that ASD is characterized by long-range underconnectivity and short-range overconnectivity in the frontal cortex, but recent reviews suggest that underconnectivity takes place both locally and globally. As referenced to earlier, a primary region of interest from these reviews is the SLF-AF, and its associated underconnectivity in the ASD population. The inconsistent findings concerning the connectivity of this fiber tract exemplify the heterogeneity of this ASD phenotype. Although it seems that ASD symptoms can be characterized by their distinct neuroactivation patterns, the variability in symptom expression and severity level remains a challenge for the field. Given the heterogeneity within ASD, it is a primary goal in ASD research to better understand the homogeneous subgroups that are represented under this broad clinical diagnosis. As an extension of my prior work in identifying personality subgroups in Dr. Wood's previous datasets, a second aim of this proposed study would be to identify personality subgroups within this sample. Advancing from my previous findings, the proposed study will then also use the resting state neuroimaging data to see if these personality subgroups are identified on a neural level as well. The aforementioned aims continue the line of research that seeks to build a conceptual model of the multiple autisms. As highlighted in a review by Torgman and colleagues earlier this year, given the heterogeneity of the ASD phenotype and the existence of both syndromic and apparent non-syndromic autism, studying ASD requires taking a multidimensional approach. By observing ASD symptomatology through the lens of personality and its associated neuroactivation patterns, the proposed study aims to identify possible subtypes of autism that emerge from the convergence of various personality traits that prove maladaptive in the current cultural context. Thank you.